I'm going to invite the next panel. Please switch on the video and the mic. Bibhu Mohapatra. I have Her Highness Radhikaraje, and I have wonderful Sandra. Are you all there? Let me see.
Hi.
Oh, amazing. Hi. Oh, Radhikaji, yay. Okay.
Can you see me? And more importantly, can you hear me?
Oh,
yes.
Sounds great. I know we did a little bit of a test with Radhika Ji's audio and we were like getting worried, but this is perfect. Well, thank you all for being here. Welcome. It is my honor to have you all extremely busy leaders here today. I think there is an echo. If you all could mute and just unmute when you're speaking, that would be great. Thank you for your time to support the artisans and makers. I will do a quick round of introduction. Her Highness Radhika Ji, she is a heritage conservationist, textile revivalist, wildlife enthusiast, history narrator, traveler, writer, public speaker, and director of CDS Art Foundation. Alongside her duties as a royal figure, she is the Queen of Baroda, India. She's constantly seen educating and promoting artisanal products. She's a textile revivalist. So I have been so impressed with, how cooperative and her passion for support, towards the artisans. You can see her actually social media posts. You will know it all. And then moving on to Bibhu, all of you know he is an iconic designer, creative director of Bibhu Mohapatra. And when I was looking up, more about him, his history, background, something really stood out that in his words, I would like to read. When I think about my work, it always goes back to this idea of crafts that are ancient or dying or actively being reinvented. Those crafts speak to me. That's so wonderful, Bibhu. Bibhu's mother, Sasikala, instilled at him at an early stage an obsession for handwork and textiles, as well as a deep appreciation for making clothes that function, symbolizes something powerful. Love that. And he just launched his 2021 fall collection. I think it was last week. It has a romantic mood, beautiful details. I can't believe that despite this hectic, New York Fashion Week, he is here to show support to all our artisans. So thank you so much, Bibhu. And Sandra, moving on to Sandra, she is the chairperson of the fashion department at FIT, which is one of the leading fashion schools of the world. So much respect for, for the institute, for, Sandra's role. She oversees the fashion department, footwear and accessories, jewelry department, and menswear. She completed a doctoral degree, and I think I read that her dissertation, Through the Eye of the Needle, craftivism as an emerging mode of civic engagement and cultural participation that examines the offline and online practices of craftivists in all the online groups, and hopefully some of that conversation we will have today. She loves all types of craft, but her main craft is sewing. I hope I'm right out there, Sandra. But having all of you in one place, designers, academia, textile, conservationists, it is a dream for me because, I've always wondered, why do we work in isolation? There is so much work going on out there, but if we could just unite and do this together, right? To empower handmade in this mass production, homogeneous world. So just to kick off, again, the attendees, thank you for being here. Please do send your questions in the Q&A section, not in the chat section. I would like to start off just by asking all of you, why do you think the world needs handmade from your perspective? So maybe we could begin with Sandra.
Hi, good morning, everyone. And thank you for inviting me to this presentation. So the handmade, what is the importance of the handmade? One of the things when I think about handmade products is that it carries on the legacy of diverse cultures and traditions. It helps support the craftspeople. Also, in terms of schooling and in terms of the handmade, students and need to be educated in these skills so that we are passing them along for future generations. They say so much about our culture and our society. We also need to build direct links to these craftspeople in terms of the handmade skills, and also not just think handmade, but also think of handmade in terms of ensuring ethical standards are practiced, and committing more to a circular economy. But the handmade in every aspect is very important in design, but also in just sociocultural practice.
Thank you for that. It's a wonderful note. Radhikaji, would you like to go next?
Hi, Saloni. I hope you can hear me. Am I clear?
Yes.
That's great, because I'm sitting in a very remote village in Gujarat, and I'm actually sitting in a pencil factory. So please forgive my surroundings. I hope I'm audible. So coming back to what is the importance of handmade, having seen handmade very closely in India, when I see an artisan working with a craft, it is an extension of the body. It's an extension of the mind. Whether it is weaving, it's almost in synchronicity with the breath. It is really, when you see them work and you see everything comes from nature. When they're working in craft, everything is made by nature, as are we. So it's really an extension of giving a new form to what nature has already created. It's giving your own interpretation. And this is not something which is one generation. It has been there for thousands of years, and we have perfected it, given it our own essence. That's why each piece is different. It's bespoke. When we talk of fashion or creating something new, we talk of bespoke, but it in India or anywhere in the world where craft has existed, everything has been bespoke, because no two items created by man, by hand, can be the same. And there is almost a spiritual essence in it which comes through when you work with your hand and you work at your pace and exude creativity. It's like what Sant Kabir, who was a weaver and is regarded as a saint. There's so much philosophy and depth that comes from a job almost as mundane as weaving. Only that it isn't mundane. There is so much depth in it. So also in the lockdown, in the pandemic, one realized that an artisan could work from home, because all he had to rely on was his hands or his basic tools. He didn't need to work from a factory or anywhere else. And so work could continue. And in that sense, art and craft is very self-sustainable. And that's why it has endured all these pandemics and difficult times that the world has seen over so many centuries. Mm-hmm. So nothing can replace what is created by hand.
Thank you for that. And Bibhu, what's your perspective on why the world needs handmade?
Well, as Radhikaji and Sandra sort of touched on, I think that is where I'm going also with this, that we all need handmade, and because that's where we come from, before technology took over our lives, because I really believe that machines do not keep legacies or traditions alive. Human beings do. And for centuries, these traditions and craft remain alive through generations as artisans sort of practiced them and sort of passed on that knowledge to the generations that came after. So it doesn't matter what country and what specific craft we're talking about, whether it's textiles, whether it's carving. It is more important today than it has ever been for all of us to pay attention to that and make a deliberate attempt in our lives. Doesn't matter, we could be in fashion, we could be simply a consumer. We just need to pay attention to what we are supporting. And because unfortunately, I believe that we're on a very high-speed train towards extinction of many of these crafts. And if we don't encourage and empower artisans that practice and offer this knowledge. At this point, it's not even about product, it's about that knowledge that is the most, it's on the verge of being extincted. And so my focus has been always been textiles, because like you said, my mother sort of put me into it as a young age, and the textiles that she had, they always had a purpose, and they were repurposed so many times. A beautiful Sambalpur ikat sari that was, I remember she wore it, and then after it, let's say it sort of faded or became, so then it became my sister's outfit, and then it became pillowcases. And so it's the very simple practices that handmade things allow us to sort of repurpose, and because they were made with such integrity, they last forever. And that's what we are fighting against, because we have been so programmed lately for this pace of creating fast fashion and consuming and staying on trend. We have sort of, not haven't paid attention to the gems that we as humans have been responsible for generation to keep it alive thus far. So, but thank you very much for including me this morning in this panel, and I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Oh, the pleasure is all ours. So wonderful to see you all here. And, what you rightly mentioned, it is definitely a very big concern regarding the pace at which, the consumption habit is going. And I know a lot of good work is being done by activists, by organizations to bring that awareness. But is that pace enough? So a question to Sandra. What Bibhu mentioned, about how do we preserve it? I've always thought that, our young designers, the ones who are getting nurtured in fashion schools, what kind of future do you see them crafting when it comes to artisanal fashion? And, are the curriculums that's being planned, or even the students themselves organically, showing interest in learning about heritage craft, or even just anything handmade? How do you see that, getting crafted?
Well, it's a great question. So I'd like to say, due to the pandemic, and if I can say there has been some silver linings in education due to the pandemic, that students at the beginning, particularly when we were forced to go remote, did not necessarily have sewing machines, certainly didn't have knitting machines, all the technology that has pushed us towards faster fashion. And they had to really pick up their needles and their knitting needles and learn to start crafting by hand. And this has now become something very important. It was a surprise, I think, at how valuable learning these methodologies were for students and how much they enjoyed them. I think the act of creation and the act of creating something handmade really slows a designer down and makes the design and the work much more thoughtful. When you're stitching something and it could take weeks to stitch by hand, a lot more thought and creativity, I think, goes into developing the product than if you're stitching it on a sewing machine or producing it by machine. So I think in terms of, maybe this is a little off topic, in terms of curriculum, I think we are coming to a radical point in schools, and we're looking at the issues in society, and we're realizing that fashion schools need to address the issues, the global issues that are out there, issues of climate change, issues of global unrest because of racism, diversity, inclusion, and what does this mean for our curriculum? And in terms of, through the lens of looking at just craft, we need to look at fashion and start looking at fashion of populations that are marginalized. Why aren't we studying the fashion of Indigenous people? I'm Canadian originally. And of course, there's a great emphasis in the Canadian schools on Indigenous and First Nation traditions and workmanship, particularly in fashion and also in jewelry in particular. First Nation work is is amazing. But we also on the other hand, we need to teach our students about cultural appropriation. And what does it mean to look to marginalized populations, Indigenous populations, BIPOC, and adapt their crafts for use. So you need to think about, what kind of companies are you partnering with? Are they minority owned? Are the crafts that you're working with, are you honoring these traditions or appropriating these traditions? So I think we have a long, long way to go. And we need to look to setting guiding principles of diversity, inclusion, equity in our curriculum, and everything we do will build upon those things. And part of that is honoring the crafts of many cultures and bringing that much more into centering it in our curriculum and honoring those traditions.
Oh, thank you for that. I think we did receive many registrations from FIT and Parsons students. I hope they heard, and I really look forward to this group of young people who will really kind of open a new design eras with a lot more artisanal designs being visible. And is Radhika ji there? I had the next question, something along the lines that Sandra mentioned. We, while the youth are there, and there's certain roles and responsibilities that we expect from them, in terms of brands and aspirational designers, whom the customers follow, right? And through these designers, they can bring greater awareness and appreciation of art. How can the brands do that? Because and the reason I ask is because you work so closely with a lot of different designers as well as the artisan brands themselves, and you are also sometimes the customer. So how can this awareness be brought about by the brands, the customers, and the designers?
In my experience, Saloni, a lot of brands are aspirational, whether you look at it, whether it's an iPhone or a Louis Vuitton or so on and so forth. They're aspirational, they stand for quality, and they stand for a certain lifestyle. They're aspirational. So we need to start associating that level of aspirational value to our crafts. And that
I think we lost her. Radhika ji, I think the video and the audio is, I think, network issues. No worries. I'm sure she will bounce back. You are on mute. Could you unmute, please? Radhika ji?
I'm here. Can you see me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're back.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, maybe I'll switch off the video. That's what I did earlier. So maybe you can hear me better. Can you hear me?
We can.
All right. Okay. So I feel that what we need to do is our crafts need to be associated with the aspirational value, because unfortunately for all of us around the world, craft has been something we've grown up seeing around us. We don't look at it as something aspirational or something that one has to work hard on a higher level of status, of aesthetics. Most of us, most of the rich cultures which have craft around us, so the novelty is not there. And the fact that the crafts are not seen in a fancy shop on a high street Kensington or on Bond Street. That's people selling their wares in open fairs or flea markets. So the crafts have somewhat got associated with kitsch which or something which is not really of or indicative of class and status. We just, I think, take it for granted, and we slowly need to inculcate perhaps a means of getting that there. And I, in my own personal capacity, I realized this when through the pandemic I tried to create awareness for the artisans and the craftsperson. When I was wearing anything that was crafted, I would talk about the provenance or the craftsman. And the artisans would reach out to me and say that they have sold 10 pieces, or so much stock has got liquidated from pending material that they had. So, and I'm just a fraction. My following is just a fraction compared to what.
I think we have some audio challenges from Radhikaji's side. Radhikaji, I'm going to pause you for a bit. I hope you're hearing me. I'm going to move on to Bibhu, actually. Hold on to all those wonderful thoughts. Yes, I'm just going to move on to Bibhu.
Did you lose me?
Yes, just the audio. And I will carry on, Bibhu. I've always, been curious how from, and I myself, I'm a designer, but when it comes to, the bigger fashion houses, the contemporary designers, I feel like there isn't enough representation of the artisanal craft. How, is it because, the interest is at a different, direction, or how can we make artisanal craft more inclusive?
I think it's. I will have to echo a little bit what Radhikaji was saying. We need to get back to a place where we have to get the mindset that we need this artisanal craft. It's not a charity that we when we talk about craft, we're doing our part, to save crafts. No, it's not a charity. It's what we need. This should be a part of our main DNA of what we do. At least as a designer, I would like to think that. That being said, it's a tall order to brands, whether big or small, to make change happen overnight. It's not going to happen. It doesn't matter what specific craft or the scale you're talking about. So that being said, we need to focus on one area and one chapter and just be really focused on what do we need to do first. When I talk about a craft and my focus and what I have been sort of, especially through the pandemic, my focus has been sort of how to plan, to rebuild on little things that I have done back home, right, in the handloom or Odisha handloom area. So now I'm thinking that I need to actively make that craft a part of my collection, because I have used the material, I have designed, and they always have stayed there because there's a market there. But what is the bridge? Like, I need to bring that to my world actively, to my for the next collection. Of course, there are obstacles, how to procure them, how to make sure that if I used it in the textiles in my collection, I want to make sure that we can deliver to a global market in a timely manner. As we know, a lot of these materials take long time to produce. But if we just sort of set that aside for a second, I think the focus always should start with the artisans, giving them pride, empowering them, and giving them infrastructure within our capacity. And I have this tiny little platform, and I know some people who can help me make a difference. So I think it's a small start, but I also think that all major disruptions start with a small effort. And I want to adopt a specific craft and its artisans to, and probably start with a collection that is dedicated to that. And through that, I'm able to tell an authentic story of those artisans and sort of bring their world and my world. And that way I can also educate my audience that not only it's about my designs, but it's about those weavers, that weavers community, or one weavers household that made this happen. If I could through my brand's platform tell that story, that's a good start for me. And hopefully I will inspire the students that I mentor every year, that they will also use that as a formula. But we got to start somewhere. It's a big task, but we got to start somewhere and stop thinking craft as a charity.
Right. And, we have many artisans who have joined us today, of course, the finalists, but they're also from different parts of the world, right? Where craft is practiced, either as a culture, either as a hobby, just as a passion, as a trade. There are so many different forms of it. So I wanted to ask, and feel free, any one of you, to jump in here, even Sandra, what can the artisans from their side do to make this partnership thrive? What kind of direction or ideas or approach should they have? Because many times what we see is they wait for orders to come to them or ideas from designers to get to them. Is there anything that you would suggest that it could also be more proactive from their side? Sandra, would you like to go first?
Sure. Well, the one thing that comes to mind is that I think as educational institutions, it's up to us to create bridges and to work with companies such as your own, or companies that can help facilitate, creating that relationship between schools with their student community and their educators and the artisans. And now I think, as we've seen in the pandemic, one can learn anywhere. Of course, it is dependent on internet connections, which I think in the United States we take for granted that everybody has access, which it's not. There is an enormous digital divide globally and within our own country. But we need to facilitate those relationships and figure out who do we partner with to bring us into direct contact. Because I think it's important that the artisans be the ones to teach directly their crafts and benefit from this teaching, that we're not interpreting their skills for them and then reteaching them, but that we're going directly to the artisans. And I think they need to have more of a voice in our curriculum and more of a voice in our teaching. I mean, we're now looking at developing curriculum around bringing people in who teach heritage crafts, in sewing, in all types of work in the fashion industry, to teach our students directly. So I think it's important, but we also need help. We need help in building those bridges and building those connections.
Yes, I mean, we would love to see more of those collaborations between artisans and the students, the universities, the education centers happening. Radhikaji, would you like to share?
So I think that the artisans know their medium and their craft better than anyone else. They've been doing it generationally. So that awareness and that depth of knowledge is incomparable. Where sometimes they are lacking is in the application, because they are working from their homes or huts in a very, very remote rural area, and they are not really aware of how trends are moving or what really the requirement or the lifestyle is around the world. There is where the disconnect happens. I think social media, especially now in this pandemic, a lot of artisans have resorted to that to good benefit. However, I feel that if they were to just get not so much the technique they already have, but the adaptation of it into different products and different, whether it's outfits or any other medium, just to really give them that the kind of interpret it in a more current way would make a lot of difference. And I know a lot of organizations around the world are trying to facilitate it, but still we need to build greater bridges. I think that's where a big lapse is.
Okay. And Bibhu, would love to hear your perspective as well. What can the artisans do from their side?
I think it's just to, I think Radhika ji and Sandra really covered a lot of it, but I think it's about putting pride back in their craft for them to feel proud of their work. Doesn't matter what their conditions is. Like Radhika ji just said, they could be in a comfortable home, or they could be working out of a hut. So. But they have to have that pride back in their craft so that they can play the role of a mentor and open their windows to their and doors to their walls to the younger generation to come in to become the new guards of that craft, whether it's their own children or associations and collaborations with educational institutes locally or globally. I think they do need support with building that bridge, that, as Radhika ji said, and whether it's technology, whether it's giving them some sort of infrastructure so that their connectivity grows, and educate them, like how they can also have direct connection to their consumers globally and tell their own stories. So yeah, I think for them to be open about because it used to be considered as a sacred thing for them. Many still do, because it is sacred. So and you, as an outsider, you had no place. But now those rules are sort of gone. I think we need to bring in more people and be as inclusive as we can from both sides, whether it's the brands or the market or the source, to really support and sustain this this world of craft.
And just actually, because this is all happening for the artisans, I would like to hear from Radhika ji. You work closely with them, and also thinking about global artisans. What are their aspirations, right? What do they dream of? Are you there? Are you frozen? I think she's. Let's wait a few seconds. Yes, Radhika ji. So what do you think are the aspirations of the artisans, that you are in contact with?
So, just an extending to what Bibhu said was that I have seen that there is no pride, like that the artisans feel for their craft now, something that they have been carrying on for generations. Weavers say to me that I would never curse my worst enemy with the life of an artisan, that I would never want my child to continue this, because there's nothing but penury and
Okay. So sorry about this internet connection. But okay, I think we will move on. I would like to, before moving on to the next Q&A round, just get some quick success stories from around the table. Bibhu, would you like to share one memorable experience working with an artisan or a community, artisanal community, you would want to share?
Sure. I wouldn't call it as a success story, but I would call it as a big eye opener. About 10 years ago, I was invited to be a part of this Odisha Handloom Textile or AGAATI revival project that had been started, and there were a few designers were already involved, and I joined at the tail end of it. And as a part of that, I was taken to a few clusters, and one of them was in a little area called Mohapatra near Cuttack in Odisha, and I went there, and my heart was full, my eyes were popping out from what I saw. But I particularly remember going to one household where the entire family was dedicated to what they did, and including the visually impaired mother who was in her 80s. She was working with spools of silk and making sure she can get the imperfect, mark the imperfect parts of the yarn. So eyes were, there was no visibility, but she was doing that. And she was there working maybe 12-hour days, and her son, who was on a loom, and I went inside, and she, there was pride. I have to say that there was pride, and a man showed me there are 3 looms: his grandfather, his father, and his own. And I said, like, okay, so you really need your mother to do her part to continue what you're doing. He said yes, and we're a good team. And then I asked the same question, like, so how about your kids? I mean, I'm sure you have offsprings. And he laughed and he said, do you think I'm going to bring them into this? We can barely make a living here. And so they're better off on a call center outside of town somewhere. And that just got sealed in my head that, the next meeting I had with the textile secretary, and I shared that. I said, let's not talk about doing great things right now. Let's just see how we can give them the basic necessities. When the earlier question that you asked is what these weavers aspire to, I think they need some stability and some of them, the areas that I'm talking about, some basic needs. So, but that's one instance in beginning of this journey for me, sort of solidified that I try to force myself to see this whole thing from the artisan's point of view, and where they come from, and how important it is for them to have that and retain that pride.
All right. And thank you for that. Sandra, is there any memorable experience you would like to share with our audience?
Okay, so I'm going to share something, not really working with artisans, but learning from them. So in this time during the pandemic, it has been much easier for people to connect and learn from craftspeople. And so I've really taken this opportunity in the last year to be able to connect to people globally that I've wanted to learn some skills from, some crafts from, particularly things like particular Portuguese embroidery or shashiko, or there's a huge tradition globally of, in this moment of make, do, and mending, of visible mending, people like Hiraku Noguchi in Japan, who I've connected with and have been learning her crafts with. I'm also working with a woman where I'm living now, since I'm not living in New York City, who owns a sheep farm locally. And she produces yarn, local yarn. There's a very big community in New England of yarn producers. Working on, we're planning some botanical dyeing workshops here. So learning the traditions of natural dyeing, learning things like mending and darning through these craftspeople it's really been an amazing experience for me over the last year. I've spent a lot of the last year hand sewing at night. And understanding the value of that for our school, and to be able to bring it into our school, it's really been a very fundamentally, this experience has really changed what I value in terms of students learning. And I think that's been one of the benefits.
Fabulous. Okay, thank you for that. And quickly moving on, we have time only for 2 questions. I've been getting a lot of cues because our participants, the finalists are very anxious. It's late in Asia, so they would want to know who the winners are. But just a quick question, starting with Bibhu. This question is from Mark. What advice do you have for artisans present here today about ways they can attract designers' interest in their work? One of my favorite questions.
I think it's about, again, going back to communication and sort of adapting to the methods of, people may be getting too many emails in their general inbox, but everyone checks their DMs, and whether it's Twitter or whether it's Instagram, I think any sort of outreach is super helpful, and sending them examples, photographs of your work. I think a lot of the artisans that I have found in the last 10 years of my namesake brand, through people reaching out to me, and of course and after I connect with someone, then that opens up a world for me through their network. So I think adapting communication is the key, and telling the story about really the essence of what you do as an artisan. I think any creative person globally is, if they are thinking the right way, I think collaborations like this is the new way of giving something unique to the audience, and keep retaining authenticity about anyone's work. So I think communication is the key.
Okay. Radhikaji, we lost you earlier. The question was, what is the aspiration, of these artisans? So something you could share?
Yes, I think they are aspirational. They are watching the market. They are innovating. They are able to understand. There is now a lot more direct communication with the end consumer. There is, I think, in this pandemic, furthermore than ever, that the pride of being an artisan is coming back. I think world over, people are acknowledging that handmade is something special and bespoke, and that there is a higher level of education and skill development that is taking place. I think the younger generation are trying to incorporate the family tradition of craftsmanship, as well as bringing in the newer techniques of and newer innovation. So I see that happening all over the country. But I do want to share one story with you, just about a moment which has stayed with me about a craftsmanship and my interaction. And this was in Dastakar in Delhi, and I was I was picking up a Venkatgiri South cotton, and I paid him for it, and I said it's beautiful, and he tells me this was the last work my wife and I made together. And she just passed away a fortnight ago before I came for this fair. And this is the last work that we both did together. And he was selling me that sari. And at that moment, I felt so helpless. And I think a lot of us feel that. That, for a small sum of money, they are selling you their skill, they are selling you that journey, they are selling you that whole emotion, that relationship. Craft is something not just, it's a way of life. It's not just a medium of earning. It's so much more. And, just that moment of him passing that fabric to me, that sari to me, it was really that I was sharing that journey with him. So that is the essence of craft. And I hope we are able to help that in some way.
Yep, it's a way of life. Very true. Thank you for sharing that. Well, there is a question for Sandra, but I think in the interest of time, I will email that separately to Sandra and have that emailed back to Jaideep, So thank you all. I know there is a lot of challenges our artisan friends face, but, we are here to celebrate and of course, have these important conversations, highlight what our actions can be around to support this beautiful community.